They laughed when he said it. The CEO of a major international fast food chain had sat in front of dozens of reporters and cameras, sipping his expensive espresso with a smirk that suggested the world belonged only to those who could afford it. Jollibee? He scoffed. It's a children's brand, a novelty. It will never stand beside McDonald's. Never. Not in the United States, not anywhere. His words were sharp, dripping with disdain, and they made the rounds of business news programs and talk shows within hours. Filipinos all over the world winced at his arrogance. It wasn't the first time someone had underestimated Jollibee, and it wouldn't be the last, but to hear it from someone with a microphone and a stock portfolio that could buy islands felt personal. He didn't know the history behind the red and yellow bee, the story of a small Filipino brand that had fought its way from a single ice cream parlor in Quezon City to an empire with millions of loyal customers across the globe. He didn't know that every Chickenjoy sold was more than fried chicken. It was childhood, family, celebration, and memory all on a plate. The video clip of the CEO went viral. Analysts on cable news networks debated it endlessly, some agreeing, some laughing at his overconfidence, but mostly people online were sharing it to mock him. Memes of him wearing a bee costume circulated. Headlines like "McDonald's CEO underestimates a bee" dominated the internet. People commented with laughter and scorn, and in the Philippines, there was a wave of pride and defiance. Filipinos everywhere rallied behind Jollibee as though the CEO had just thrown down a gauntlet. Prove him wrong. And Jollibee did in the quietest and most effective way imaginable. Months went by. The CEO returned to his usual schedule. Board meetings, quarterly earnings, interviews, and trips to various locations to oversee expansions. He never spoke of Jollibee again in public. He assumed the world had moved on and that his words had landed with the authority of someone accustomed to making forecasts and setting trends. What he did not anticipate, and what he could never publicly admit, was that Jollibee had not moved on. It had silently grown, fueled by people who wanted to prove that a small Filipino fast food chain could compete, charm, and thrive where giants had long dominated. Late at night, when his schedule allowed for solitude, he began to notice something unusual in his routine. CCTV footage in his office building revealed patterns he couldn't explain. Security cameras that he rarely glanced at showed a single figure walking into a nearby fast food restaurant after closing hours. At first, he assumed it was a cleaning crew, a loyal employee, or someone doing inventory checks. But over weeks, the same figure appeared again and again, always after hours, always alone, always moving with quiet reverence toward the red and yellow sign that glowed softly against the dark city skyline. It didn't take long for someone on his team to ask, almost jokingly, "Sir, are you?" The CEO cleared his throat, embarrassed, though he did not correct the speculation. He never made public appearances at that location, never posted photos, never talked about it to anyone except a trusted assistant, whose lips were sealed as tightly as the restaurant doors at night. He had become, in his own quiet way, a regular at the Jollibee branch that had survived the mockery and grown beyond expectation. He ordered the same things each visit: a large bucket of Chickenjoy, 2 servings of Jolly Spaghetti, and a peach mango pie. He ate slowly, deliberately, savoring the flavor that the boardroom had mocked, the food that the world had said would never matter. No one approached him. The staff only recognized him when he paid with cash and left small tips on the counter. Cameras captured him laughing softly to himself, almost as if he were sharing a secret only he knew. No fanfare, no announcements, just quiet personal enjoyment. He started keeping notes, something he would never admit publicly. Observing the patrons, he realized something he had failed to understand before his arrogance. People loved Jollibee not because it was fast or expensive, but because it was familiar, comfortable, warm. The aroma, the color, the texture, the sweetness of the spaghetti sauce, the crisp yet tender Chickenjoy evoked joy and memories, moments of connection that could not be measured in quarterly profits or market share. For the first time in years, he saw something that no spreadsheet could capture. Meanwhile, Jollibee continued to expand quietly, letting its reputation grow organically. The company did not respond to his earlier comments, did not issue statements, and did not try to engage in competition that relied solely on corporate power. Instead, it doubled down on what it always had done, creating joy through food, building relationships with local communities, and maintaining the heart of the brand that had always been underestimated. Filipino families in Los Angeles found the branch a haven. High school students hung out after classes, sharing Chickenjoy buckets. Office workers took lunch breaks, smiling over jelly spaghetti. Tourists discovered the taste of the Philippines in every bite. The brand's influence seeped into the cultural fabric of the city without anyone noticing, except for the one CEO who had ridiculed it months ago. At first, he tried to rationalize his nightly visits as curiosity, an anthropological study of a food trend. But over time, it became something else. The visits were no longer about proving anything, nor about curiosity. They were about connection. He understood, in ways he never had before, that food could transcend judgment and status. That a simple meal could contain layers of culture, history, and emotion. Every bite he took reminded him of the vibrancy of Filipino resilience, the creativity of a nation that could take small beginnings and make them remarkable. It humbled him bit by bit until even the polished boardroom arguments seemed distant and insignificant. One night, as he sat in the corner booth, alone, finishing the last piece of peach mango pie, a young staff member hesitantly approached. He had been training a new assistant manager and noticed the CEO's repeated visits. "Sir, I didn't know you liked Jollibee," the employee said. The CEO looked up, startled, and for a moment considered lying, but he found that he could not. He simply smiled and said, "I didn't either. Not until I tasted it properly." The words felt heavy with honesty, and the young employee, recognizing the sincerity in the man's voice, nodded respectfully. There was no mockery here, only understanding. Soon after, an internal conversation began in his own company. Executives noticed that the Jollibee branch in Los Angeles was consistently crowded at hours when other chains were empty. Sales data and customer feedback were extraordinary. No amount of advertising could explain it fully, they said, but the patterns were undeniable. People had chosen joy, connection, and nostalgia over flash and glitz. And while the CEO had once publicly dismissed the brand as insignificant, privately he became one of its most careful observers, documenting trends and customer behaviors. He kept his notes meticulously, creating a hidden case study that only he could access. The quiet humiliation of his initial arrogance never left him. Sometimes, late at night, he replayed the clips of his televised mockery and compared it to what he had learned firsthand. He realized that words spoken in arrogance were fleeting, but experiences were permanent. The laughter of reporters and critics had been shallow. The genuine happiness of families, the laughter of children sharing Chickenjoy, and the warm gratitude of employees had substance. He felt a pang of regret, but also a sense of awakening. He understood that true leadership was not about power over others, but about humility and understanding what matters most. The CEO began to see patterns beyond the restaurant itself. He recognized the cultural significance of food in immigrant communities, how it served as a bridge between the old home and the new city. He understood the subtle artistry in balancing flavor, texture, and comfort, and he began to apply these insights quietly to his own company, but never publicly. There was no press release, no interviews. He preferred to let the brand he had once mocked continue to thrive, knowing that some victories were best appreciated in silence. Months passed and the CCTV evidence was no longer a secret. A few trusted aides had seen him walk in after hours, and rumors began to circulate. Social media quietly caught wind, and although his public image remained impeccable, insiders started joking in hushed tones. The man who mocked the bee now eats with it. There was no scandal, no public confession, just the irony of life weaving its own poetic justice. The CEO never felt the need to explain himself. He had learned that humility was personal, that acknowledgement did not always require applause. One evening, as he left the restaurant with a full box of Chickenjoy to take home, always paying cash and tipping generously, he paused to watch the employees clean up after closing. The staff waved politely, unaware of who he truly was. For a fleeting moment, he felt a deep connection to something greater than himself. It was not corporate rivalry, stock prices, or fame that was joy. The simple human joy of sharing something meaningful, of participating quietly in a tradition that had been built on care and excellence. Eventually, he returned to his own boardrooms, to meetings with analysts and shareholders, to discussions of expansion and market share. But the lessons he carried with him were invisible yet transformative. He can no longer see his competitors, employees, or even his own strategies in purely transactional terms. There was a human layer now, a recognition of cultural intelligence, humility, and authenticity that he had previously dismissed. And it all began with a small, seemingly childish fast food chain and a little red and yellow bee that refused to be underestimated. Years later, when asked by a journalist about global fast food trends, he would speak carefully, as always measured, professional, and courteous. He never mentioned Jollibee by name, but he did speak of the unexpected power of authenticity, cultural connection, and the understated genius of brands that truly listen to their customers' hearts. Those who knew the story understood exactly what he meant. The joke he once made on live television was no longer funny. It was the opening chapter of a quiet, personal revolution in his own understanding of business, culture, and humility. And somewhere in Los Angeles, the red and yellow sign glowed every night, beckoning. Families, students, tourists, and even one particular CEO, who walked through its doors not as a competitor, not as a critic, but as a participant in something much bigger than himself. He never told anyone, and he never posted a photo. He just came quietly, again and again, savoring the truth that had always been obvious to the people who mattered. Joy could not be mocked. Happiness could not be silenced. And the legacy of care, excellence, and humility would always outshine arrogance. In the end, the laughter of that long-ago press conference faded into nothing. The world continued to enjoy its Chickenjoy, Jolly Spaghetti, and Peach Mango Pie in the CEO. Secret pilgrimage became a personal lesson etched into his soul. Never underestimate a people, never dismiss a culture, and never doubt that truth, care, and joy always win. And that little bee, smiling from the corner of the red and yellow sign, had proven it every night.